Hello and welcome. Thank you all for being here today on this July 15th. I am Nick Kanoki with the Asset Leadership Network, and it is my pleasure today to be talking with our guests, Yvonne Carney and Jim Dieter. And before we get underway, I just want to thank our patron sponsors, ABS Quality Evaluations and ABS Group and Onuma System. If you want to learn more about these organizations, it would be abs-qe.com or abs-group.com and onuma-bim.com. And we really appreciate the support of these organizations. We could not do this program and others without their support. These are our organizational members. And again, we could not do things like this and other programming like our newsletter, et cetera, without the support, the continued support of these groups. So thank you very much. And I will pass it off to Jim Dieter now. But before I do, I just want to say, if you're out there watching, we'd love to hear from you. Please participate by sending any questions or comments in the chat. And we'd love to hear from you and hopefully get those answered. And, you know, if we don't have time in the next 30 minutes, we'll see if we are able to go into overtime for a bit to answer those last questions, but send them in at any time. And Jim Dieter, take it away.
Hey, well, great. Thanks, Nick. And it's such a pleasure to welcome Yvonne Carney on today. I've gotten to know her a little bit this year in our usual virtual way. We've never been in the same place at the same time that I can remember, but virtually we have been. And I've been really impressed by her knowledge and energy. And she has an interesting background in multiple areas or sectors in asset management. So welcome, Yvonne. How are you today?
I'm good. Good to be here.
Good. And where in the world are you?
I am in Silver Spring, Maryland.
Okay, so a suburb of Washington, like myself, and where Nick used to be from. But Nick, you didn't tell people where you are again today.
I am in Lander, Wyoming. About 2.5 hours southeast of Jackson Hole, Wyoming, if you're familiar, on the edge of the Rocky Mountains as they extend into Wyoming through the Continental Divide.
All right, that's good. Mike Bordenaro was going to be the host today, but he got a new computer this week, and it's not happening. So. We'll get that taken care of and make Mike just listen. We can talk about him, I guess. He won't be able to get back in. But Yvonne, we always start with an origin story. So, how did you get here? How did you get into asset management?
Yeah, well, I would say all of my career has had some connection to analysis and infrastructure. And I was sort of thinking back a little bit, doing a little reflecting about where did I first get exposed to asset management? And it was during my time, I worked at the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority, commonly known as Metro. And for those of you who have ever visited Washington, D.C., or if you're in this area, you may have taken a trip on the Metro Rail or Metro bus system. And one of the first things that I did is I worked in the performance office at Metro. And as an analyst, one of the first groups I worked with was our elevator escalator group. And as a customer to DC is a little bit unique in its design, that there are very, 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 very long escalators and a number of stations. So to access the station as a customer, you first start your journey on that escalator or elevator. And at the time when I was working there, the elevators were not particularly reliable. And of course, that was a problem for customers who encountered a broken escalator, and that made them late on their journey or even made their trip inaccessible. And so as an analyst, I got to dig into data out of our maintenance management system and try to figure out what was going on. And of course, that led me on many different paths and conversations with lots of different staff working in different departments to understand what were all the drivers of ultimately the escalators not being available. And you learn all kinds of things. It's about the design, it's about its replacement history, it's about, you know, our maintenance practices, or about our training of our staff, and about how we communicate to customers, all of these things. And so that was, I think, the first introduction I had to, okay, asset management. This is a systematic way of thinking about how we bring value to our customers through assets. And to the extent we can make better decisions in all of those areas and coordinate across all of that, then we can have better service to our customers and fulfill our mission. And then as I kind of continued in my career there, I also, MAP 21 came out, and so was involved in helping to set performance measures for asset management, performance measures and all that. So kind of came to asset management through performance management and analysis.
That was a great story of how, you know, the micro becomes the macro. And yeah, that's awesome. I got to tell you my escalator story though.
Of course, absolutely.
Written on these escalators, and I don't have any horror stories really about them.
Well,
you know, I mean, they exist. I know that.
Yeah.
But my honey Helene has some phobia about escalators, especially long escalators. So she had accompanied me to Prague for one of the ISO 55000 meetings, you know, back in 2012, 13, something like that. And we were going to get on the subway system there. And there we got to the escalator, and we thought, oh, it doesn't look too bad, you know. So, you know, it has a long run up, you know. And the first thing we noticed was, where in the United States, it seems like escalators all kind of go at the same speed. I don't know what that is. It never occurred to me that they could go at different speeds. Yeah. But this escalator went fast. Let me just say, it was
like, hold on.
And we got on, and they go, and then we get to where it goes down, and it goes, and it was long, and it was long, and fast. Fortunately, there was a huge wind coming up the, you know, the tunnel, and that I think was the only thing that kept Helene's heart beating on the trip down.
Oh my gosh, was that her like last ride during that trip?
Well, it could have been like the old, you know, was it Kingston Trio, Ride on the MTA? Do you ever remember that song? That's way old. It's like, you never return, because you can't get off. She said, if I have to ride that escalator or one like it to get off this train, it ain't happening.
No. Oh,
so we found another station that had a shorter escalator. Anyhow, yeah, somebody's telling me my Kingston Trio story is way old. That's an early 60s story, but you can look it up.
It's okay that I didn't catch that reference. Okay, very good.
All right, so, but how'd you get from transportation to water?
Oh yeah, so, well, I had been at Metro for 10 years, and I had loved that experience, getting to work in different parts of the organization. And I was, after escalators, I worked with the rail car maintenance folks, and then the facilities. So it was great. I mean, I had just the pleasure of working with so many different parts of the organization. It was great. And of course, when you go to, you know, well, pre-COVID, when you could go to parties and things, of course, everyone had a story to tell, their personal story to tell about Metro. So that was always entertaining. But I think I was like interested in the strategic planning aspects and saw this opportunity and at WSSC Water, and that drew me to that. I think there's sometimes with you can work on performance, but you need that alignment to the strategic plan in order for it possible for performance management, asset management to be as impactful I'd hoped it could be. And so, my work at WSSC Water has been around facilitating the development and now the execution of a strategic plan, in addition to data analytics and other things. And so, that opportunity to get to facilitate that was exciting and drew me to that.
It's awesome. And the thing that I liked most about your initial origin story was how you immediately got to kind of breaking down these silos, or at least kind of reaching into a variety of them, and and just how cool that is, that these things exist, these very specialized areas, and sometimes it takes an asset manager or whatever, someone who's thinking large, or thinking strategic, thinking planning, to reach into each, get them to talk to each other, or at least talk to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Because there's a lot of convening and getting people to see the connections between how their work connects to someone else's work, and that it's often a process that, while organizations can be organized in departments and very often become siloed, asset management is very much about beginning to end of the life cycle of the asset and serving the customer. And from the customer perspective, it needs to work well. and so breaking down those silos and getting people to come together is also has been something that I think is really important to moving organizations forward.
And that was the thing I liked best about the escalator story. It all comes straight back to service delivery. It's like these silos kind of developed. I don't know exactly how, but I almost imagine they developed because departments were thinking, okay, how would this be best to structure this for us internally? And asset management almost brings it back, that alignment back to the original mission, which is service delivery to the the stakeholders.
That's right. Yeah.
So I have to share one impression, which is, it's ALN has long, and especially in the last year or two, really been embracing equity and understanding the real role it plays, which is to really embrace that diversity of opinion and experience across all kinds of boundaries. And what struck me as you were talking earlier is, you could say that you have grown up in an environment where asset management system thinking is prevalent. And, people of my age are anywhere close to it, are definitely more likely coming from a silo rather than having, at least the availability of that kind of systems thinking. Does that resonate with you, or do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think so. I was thinking that what I could share is, from our kind of current, my thinking of kind of what we've been working on during this pandemic, and thinking about equity is in water. Well, there's been a lot of research predating the pandemic on water equity. So I think there's just some good thinking that's already happening in this area that with the focus of the last year has enabled us to leverage that good thinking. And in water in particular, the issue has been turnoffs for customers, and then that's the way that is thinking of it purely as a business. If someone doesn't pay, then we would turn you off. But I think the pandemic shone this light on that, that just doesn't work. And so anyway, I think our utility, as well as many others, have been thinking, putting a lot of thought into how to structure programs to provide assistance to customers who are not able to pay. One thing that is really special program that WSSC Water has is called the Water Fund. It was founded by employees, but it enables customers to round up their bill. And it's something that we've really been promoting in this last year to enable customers to utilize that program. And it's a partnership through the local Salvation Army. And something that my team has been helping our customer service staff on is helping to kind of overlay data and information that would help decision makers make more informed decisions with more of an equity lens. So for data folks, that's, you know, pulling in things like census data and unemployment data, things that have existed within the organization for different purposes. Things like in our engineering group, they're using, of course, mapping for all kinds of different reasons, but overlaying that with customer data and, you know, what customers are past due and trying to understand and reach out to those customers more. So, so I think, so that's something that is something that we plan to do even more of, and even thinking about as we prioritize capital improvement projects. How do we need to be thinking about equity through that? So, and then I think your question was also around like just my growing up in it in this career during this time. Did it lead me to be more open to the systems thinking and kind of breaking down silos? I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, that's my honest answer. I'm not sure.
That's good. So Mike is texting in a question, and he was fascinated by the employees starting this program, the Roundup program. Can you tell us any more about that?
Yeah, yeah. So I think I wanted to say it was started in 1994. I think it's been around for a while, but so it was really help and as I said, founded by employees. And this, because we had that infrastructure in place to, and what Salvation Army does is helps us, our, you know, core our abilities are not in determining who's eligible for services, but Salvation Army does that for all kinds of other reasons and energy programs as well. And so that partnership had been established, allowed us to really focus our efforts on that. And this year we were able to do all outreach with hundreds of organizations within our region to let them know that that existed, as well as to encourage donations as well. And if anyone's interested, on our website, wsscwater.com/waterfund, I think, if you're interested in donating.
Oh. Nick, having a question in mind?
Yeah, WSCC has a good approach to ISO 55000, I've heard or seen evidence of. Could you speak to that at all? Are they certified or interested in becoming certified, or does that been thought about at all?
So yeah, so the WSSC Water has an asset management program that's been around for 10 years, which I think is probably pretty impressive among utilities to have been working so hard at that over that starting 10 years ago. I think while we have not formally pursued certification, I think a lot of what we do is kind of modeled around and inspired by the standard. And a lot of the work of that team has been around, in particular, the prioritization of the capital program. And Hugh Sinclair, who's the Asset Leadership Network member and previous presenter, he is very recently been promoted into the role of leading that team. And so I'm sure there's much to come in terms of how he kind of steers that ship to continue our improvement in that area.
Hugh's amazing. He's one of the
Absolutely.
people who, when they post something on LinkedIn, like, I'm like, oh, I'm going to read this for sure. Because it always makes me think of things in a new way. So are you and he just the coolest people there, or you got more people like that?
There's really cool people. Yeah, lots more real cool people. Yeah. They maybe are not all on LinkedIn. I guess we need to get more of them on LinkedIn.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, we've been working on the ISO 55000 revision effort. You want to share any thoughts on that? What you think about getting involved in the standards development part?
Yeah, I guess my effort, I was recruited to join by someone in transit. Actually, I had been volunteering for the Transportation Research Board, a committee there. And since I was no longer in transit, individual works in asset management at the Denver Transit Agency, sort of put my name in the hat and said, oh, you need to keep volunteering. And so my efforts I haven't actually been delving into like the standard development yet. I've mostly been involved with helping to facilitate how to encourage utilities and asset management practitioners to share their stories of success on their asset management journey, which sometimes includes certification, but sometimes not. But practitioners can really learn a lot from one another, and sometimes you can feel pretty isolated in your own organizations. So my role as a volunteer has been kind of trying to contribute the practitioner perspective, and hopefully trying to help make the standards more prominent and well known, and something that practitioners utilize as a resource.
Yeah, you need to get more. You need to get volunteer some more and get on one of the development work groups.
Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh!
Lots of fun.
This is what you do, Jim, right? You like just reel people in and like put them on, encourage them to be on different committees. Right?
I had like 6 standards meetings this week between ASD.
Oh my
and
Lord! Okay.
I gotta cut back somewhere, but it's an amazing, and I'm saying this as an ad for everybody, but being involved in standards development is an amazing educational experience. You just learn so much because it's really, I'm really glad personally that I chose a career in asset management, because it was a smaller, of course, growing exponentially now, but to feel like you can be at the cutting edge of what's happening is an amazing experience. If we were, accountants, we'd be one of, gazillions of accountants, and to make a name for ourselves would be quite a challenge. But in asset management, it's a rising profession. It'll be exciting to see, Yvonne, what, where you go next. Where do you see yourself going?
Oh, let's see. This sounds like an interview question, this one.
Sorry, I don't have a job. But,
I really feel like at WSSC Water that we have a lot to do in the way of making our data really accessible and really leverage it to make the best possible decisions, like most utilities, and like at Metro, lots and lots of data, but it's often in its data silos. So I'm excited this fall, we're going to initiate a digital strategy, and there'll be a lot of engagement with our employees about what they can envision for us as what tools we need and what data we need in the future. And I think that'll be just an incredibly helpful tool for IT, for prioritizing and budgeting, and then of course, ultimately for employees to be able to have that good information to make informed decisions. So I'm just really excited to be working on that, and I feel we have a lot of exciting work to do in that area.
Can we get any more on that? There was a question about is WSCC utilizing tools currently to manage strategic planning and initiatives, and or future tools, I guess, planning for that?
Yeah, I would say so. This is we had a strategic plan, kind of a high level document before, and so this is that I'm maybe at least for the first time in a long time having a more detailed strategic plan. So I feel like we haven't been. There are things that we're doing. We're monitoring it through our leadership teams and talking about it at and through our employee newsletters. We kind of purposely started out with kind of tool light, I guess. I was cognizant that sometimes you can really build the tool and then not yet have everyone fully on board with the value in the activity. So not nothing fancy, just using our, all the Microsoft products and things like that. But it's more about kind of hopefully about the engagement with our senior leadership and employees to kind of hopefully get everyone aligned and excited and working towards it. So, but monitoring our progress through monthly leadership meetings, as well as through a quarterly update that we publish on our website about our progress. But low tech to start.
I would just like to take a brief moment, since we're kind of getting to the end of the usual time here, and just say another big thank you to our patron sponsors, ABS Quality Evaluations and Onuma System. Please look into these organizations more if you're interested. abs-qe.com, abs-group.com, and onuma-bim.com. And then we have our organizational members. And without all these organizations, we wouldn't be able to do things like this, have great conversations with Yvonne, and et cetera. So really thankful for the support of these organizations for this program and others. And it sounded like you were talking about maybe some, there was a question about what is the greatest challenge in implementing asset management. And it sounded like you were maybe touching on some, maybe tools being one and leadership engagement another. Do you want to say more on that?
Sure. Well, I think, my first introduction to asset management was probably like the more academic, kind of like, this is what it should be. And everyone sort of is like, oh, okay, but can't like relate to it because everyone comes at it from different disciplines, and so even the words themselves were so formal, and people couldn't really connect I felt like it was hard to connect one's individual work to something that was just more, as I said, like more academic. So to me, I think that the challenge is an important one is being very planful in the change management aspects, because ultimately, this whole process is a series of individual decisions that are made by sometimes at the executive level, but every day decisions, every hour, every minute by employees that are maintaining the assets and operating the assets. So I think, the taking things the additional level of not just creating policies, but thinking through sometimes the really hard work about like, how do I help this employee to implement this big vision within the work processes of that individual employee, and doing it in a way that that employee understands the value that's meant to come out of making that better decision with better data. So I'd say change management, and then data management and analytics, and making that data available in such a way that employees can access it and make good decisions, and also feel empowered to raise their voice to act upon the data, and of course leadership to also act upon that ultimately as well, which sometimes might mean making a decision that isn't maybe what you had made before, because it's going to brings attention maybe to needing to change direction. And again, it comes back to change management. So I would say overall change management and data accessibility, I would say, are some of the biggest challenges I would see.
So that makes me even more excited to think about the future of this initiative and profession around asset management, is because clearly when you talk about asset management, you're kind of at one with the whole idea of the systems approach and structured approach to asset management. It isn't something you're trying to bolt on. It's like, it's how you do business. It's how you think about it. And it's how you're, incredibly, it's how your organization apparently thinks about it. That's cool.
You're like, more of that.
Yeah. There's an ISO angle to that too, in that I'm back in recruiting mode, but the ISO committees are made up of a lot of people, some of whom were at trade and professional associations, and most of whom are consultants and service providers. There are not that many asset owner representatives, which is where you would fall.
Mm.
And we're, I'm working on the team with Jack Dempsey and Jack Kelly and others, from around the world on the revision being considered for the ISO 55000 document. And I'm leading the effort on principles, which we call fundamentals, but now we're going to call principles. But there's a lot of discussion about how to write the document so it's readable and understandable. And it strikes me that in a role that could be very interesting and useful to the group would be to have someone like yourself on an editorial review committee to be a part of the effort to say, what are you talking about here? What are you trying to say? Like, my thing is, we're talking about asset management versus managing assets. And I'm like, hey, in German, there's not even a word for manage. So like, we're parsing, hair, splitting hairs in English, and it doesn't even translate. But that, does that sound interesting to you?
That sounds interesting. And I think that sounds important, because you ultimately want these words to be interpreted easily and used. So, yes.
Yeah. It's standards development's an interesting an educational process.
There was a question, and it said, for a government agency wanting to contract an asset management firm to get started on developing an executable asset management plan, do you have any recommendations to steer on the verbiage that should be in that contract? You mentioned almost terminology being an issue towards implementation, and you have any keywords, or like, don't use this word but use this word? Any thoughts on that?
I don't know if I have specific guidance, but I guess try it out with an audience of individuals that serve some of those different roles, or have in their work, that might be helpful to have an audience that's a more diverse audience maybe before submitting it.
Yeah, I mean, doing some, that's a great question. Doing some consulting work, and most recently in the water areas, have been involved in a few proposals. And reading the RFP is always interesting, because you learn a lot about what the organization knows from the RFP. And I think it sort of follows my simple rule. If you're familiar with 55,000, you can ask some simple questions, like, or statements is like, well, we need to develop a strategic asset management plan. We need to develop asset management plans. We need to, whatever, we can, if you speak that language, it makes it pretty simple, as opposed to trying to, put a lot of verbiage around that discussion.
I would guess one other thing that comes to mind too is like thinking about the regulatory framework of that public agency. So, for WSSC Water, it's EPA and, and the state environmental agency. So, making, like, thinking about the language is some reflective of any like guidance or regulatory requirements within that, particular sphere of asset, of public agencies.
Oh, I had, maybe this will be my last question, maybe Nick has another one, but with all this talk on Capitol Hill about infrastructure bills and water, being actually seems to be something that everybody agrees on now, which is when everybody can agree on anything now, it's pretty good.
That's great.
But is that part of the conversation at WSSC that that this might be enable some of your efforts or impact?
Yeah. I was just pulled into some discussions this week about thinking through, and actually this goes back to the earlier conversation about equity and but thinking through, like, fingers crossed that materializes, but what are some of the things that maybe grant making EPA would want to know about WSSC's water services, and also thinking about things like economic impact and equity, and so yeah, I think we are hopeful and yeah, the discussions beginning about planning for that.
Good answer.
There was a question about change management, and I was just wondering if you could say more on change management as an integral part of asset management.
Sure. Well, I guess there's different approaches and different methods, but I think for me, I have taken the pro-sci training. I think there's a lot of them out there. But it sticks with me that you need to be thinking about, first and foremost, what's in it for me, and really structuring your program to help individual employees see that and identify where there might be potential areas of resistance, and design your programs to address that. And so for me, because I am facilitating the data analytics, like, that's an area where I really haven't put change management plans in place. We're doing different things. We're, created a data community. We're providing trainings, but I know we can do a lot more. And there are, just like the systems thinking approach of asset management, change management is also structured management technique for really developing a plan that is thinking through the lens of the individual employee and how you can address, how they can get something out of it, as well as to get, make sure that you're addressing concerns at the staff level as well. So there are different approaches out there, but it's an area where I want to do more in to ensure the success ultimately of the objectives that we're trying to meet.
Cool. Yeah, and I want to apologize for jumping up a couple times, but one of the pleasures of working from home is my dog wants to come into my office and my dog wants to leave my office. So, and what he wants, is important, because
I totally understand.
You don't want to hear barking in the background. So there you go. Well, thanks, Yvonne. It's been great to have a chance to chat and get to know you a little better, and let everybody get to know you a little better. I think this is a great example of what we're trying to do with these ALN Thursday at 4 events, is get some insight into people and how asset management is a part of what they do, and you've given us a lot to think about. So we really appreciate it.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Yeah, I particularly like how you kept coming back to, how ISO 55,000, change management, asset management, data information, all this stuff, but how does the individual employee, apply that to their decision-making process and their daily work life, and just, keep coming back to the people, the individuals. And so again, I echo what Jim said. I think this is a great example of what we're trying to do here, pull the people out and get their story and see things through their eyes.
Cool.
Great.
It's a pleasure to join you.
Okay.
Thanks. Well, maybe we'll have you back some other time.
Be happy to.
Oh, Nick, I can say we haven't tied down the speaker for next Thursday yet, but we're hoping to have Dr. John Wyatt and one of his students from Cal Poly Pomona, who are involved in asset management and are connected to the National Contract Management Association and the National Property Management Association. He's got a little schedule problem, so I may have to come up with a backup plan if we can't get them on next week. But I had a pleasure to speak with them on Tuesday, and it's quite an exciting group. So we're looking forward to that.
Yeah, we hope to see you, Yvonne, as a guest and attendee some other Thursday at 4. We'll be here, and that goes for everyone else out there watching now and in the future. We'd love to see you at any of these chats.